Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Got another very special episode of the show with a very special guest. He's back. It's been a little while.
In a
The
little while.
guitarist extraordinaire, Mr. Jeff Kollman, is back here on Sea of Tranquility. What's up, Jeff?
Yeah, just got done with a random show with John Payne in Asia, playing with Three Dog Night in Aurora, and last night. And as I mentioned to you just before this started, I came home a little early so I could get ready for the podcast. So I thought it was going to be in the hotel room. So this is better to be amongst my children and
I
Edward Van
say so. Yeah.
Halen.
We were just remarking on that very cool looking blue guitar hanging on the wall. You want to tell everybody where that's from?
Yeah, so I became friends with Akira Takasaki. I want to say somewhere around 2012. I remember playing a show with him and his band, and Kenny Aronoff was playing drums with me. It was really funny because we kind of stormed in on their gig and then we sat in with them. And I remember after we played three songs with Akira, like Kenny tackled me at the front of the stage. The audience is like, what is happening? So since then, he and I become really good friends. And, we drink Jägermeister and sing karaoke late at night. And I play with Achan, Ikiji Yazawa. And Akira's a massive fan of his, but he never got to see him live. So, he got to go to the Osaka Dome. And it's tricky because, he's such a rock star. I mean, he's like, for me, it was, Edward Van Halen, Randy Rhoads, Yngwie, Akira. Like, there's just certain guys that came on. I was like, wow. And so this guitar, I think I emailed one of his guys at Killer Guitars. No, we were drinking Jägermeister rock, and he's like, oh, I said I love those guitars. I'd play one at Budokan if you sent one over. I was kind of joking, but not really, but kind of. And next thing you know, he sent this, and it's like the nicest one from the custom shop. He handpicked it, the most expensive one. It's like $6,000.
Wow.
And I just feel blessed to meet my heroes, and I always remind him there's like five guys. I'm like, remember when you guys toured with Dio? We're drinking. He goes, no Dio. I'm like, Dio, it was Dio and Loudness at the Toledo Sports Arena. He's like, no Dio. I'm like, he goes, Motley Crue. I'm like, yes, Motley Crue.
I
So,
saw I saw that show at Madison Square Garden.
yeah, man. I remember he went into Heavy Chains and he started with this clean guitar thing. And then it looped, and none of us had ever seen something loop before because he went into the lead riff. So it just kind of blew our mind. So that's the long answer of that guitar.
Yeah.
Okay, the interview's over.
The story, yeah, but the stories make up everything, right? So there's the guitar, but here's the story behind it. So that's very cool.
Right.
So we have Jeff on the channel because he's got something to talk about. 2023 AD is the brand new
Yep.
album.
I think I have vinyl now. Choke tomate kudasai. So we have CD, but we have double vinyl. And so the deal, the CD's 49 minutes long, so that's like three sides of an album.
Yep.
As you know, that sound degradation when you get close to the center, you can't go more than 22 minutes a side. 44 minutes tops. I'm getting ready to do vinyl. I'm like, I need a side four because I'm not going to start editing out songs. That's ridiculous, right?
No.
So with the vinyl side four, and I wrote one of these tunes with Guy Ellison. I mean, like a week before we went to pressing with vinyl, called 1979, and I got Rick Fiorabracci from Chick Corea's band on bass, and pretty darn cool tune. And then
Plays with everybody.
yeah, Friends, and then a tribute to my brother closes the whole thing. So yeah, so I'm very excited.
You
Please
love
support vinyl, even though you don't have a turntable.
You know that, don't you?
Anyway, so
and I do need to comment because I can see it up on top of the shelf. I see you got Tone Chaser sitting up there. We actually just did a show last night with Steve Rose and
oh
Tone.
yeah, he sent me that book and he's wonderful. I have my little Edward shrine, and it just, Edward's everything to me. So
There's nothing wrong with that.
yeah.
So the new album, any significance with the title at all?
So 2023 AD, well, it has two different I sat on the record all year and then trying to put together a deal, and then it came out in 2024, which is not really the story. And I don't want to make people think, oh, it's a tribute to Jeff Beck, like the record is, because it's not. But the intro piece, 2023 AD, it's the year he passed away, and he's arguably one of the greatest, electric guitar players that ever lived. So the intro is a dedication to Jeff. Yeah, that's kind of the long story.
Yeah, and I do get little bits of Beck references. In fact, I made a note here, specifically like one song, like Lullaby for My Love. If you were to put Jeff Beck and Gary Moore together in a song, that's the vibe I get from that one.
You know what's interesting with Jeff Beck is I never even worked on any of his tunes growing up, but I'm influenced. But I always loved his playing. I would say my favorite is like Goodbye Pork Pie Hat live at some point. But I never took the time to even work on any of the tunes that he played, or I was
hard
just
to get that feel and that phrasing, right?
Yeah, I mean, but then I'm influenced later on by guys like Michael Landau and these guys. Even though I knew who Jeff Beck was all along, I'm probably influenced through them. And there's the reference, I would say I'm more influenced by Landau than Jeff Beck. And Mike is the closest living thing to, genius guitar, period.
Oh, yeah. Terrific player. So you got you sporting that nice looking Flying V on the front. Do you play that guitar a lot on the album, or what guitars did you use?
You know what? I played a little bit, but I mainly played an SG that's not in this room right now. It's downstairs. And what else did I play? I played that V. I played a Hamer V. Again, it's downstairs. It looks like the red one there, the Carina. I don't know if you can see that.
Yep.
And let's see what else. I used an old Jose modded Marshall from 1977. It has a power tube in the preamp section. And I think Jose back in the day was trying to come up with a prototype of an amp for Edward. When you compare stories, like my best friend, one of my best friends, Alex Garcia, who's also best friends with Eric Johnson, and Alex, his mentor was Ken Fisher, Trainwreck. So there's two guys, Howard Dumble, Ken Fisher. Anyway, I acquired this amp that was in storage since 1985 through this guy Cooney, who sold it to Shane or gave it to Shane because he owed him money. It's been in my family since 2008, and I finally officially bought it off Shane. So I go and I plug the amp in for Alex, who's got ears for days. He's like, dude, it sounds like Van Halen 1 and 2. It sounds like somebody get me a doctor. And there's no variac or any of that thing. So he's like, wow, there's a power tube in the preamp section. That makes sense because it's hitting, we love power tube distortion, like Edward, you crank the amp on 10, variac, bring it down, it compresses, it's got dynamics. And then he went further to say, he was working on a prototype with Ed. And he goes, one of them, it goes a step further, one of them actually got stolen. I'm like, we look at each other. Could this, and it's just this beat up old Mark II, everything's gouged out, and there's, two of the inputs are missing, and so it's probably not his prototype that was stolen, but I'm telling you, it's something really special.
Sure.
And you just plug right in with an SG, and that's the sound of Tribal Scream, and the second tune, Tongs and Thongs, and Dark Lord Day, and
Tribal Scream is killer.
Thank you.
I mean, I love the kind of nasty riff, and the solos are really tasty. And then I like Ed Roth's organ that's kind of sitting there in the background, but like complements the song. That's really nice.
Yeah.
Really good. Now, is that Shane playing drums on that track, or is that
Shane's on the whole record except for Tongs and Thongs?
Okay, that's Chad's
on Shane's drum set with Shane's mics. It's interesting because I was playing the record for a buddy of mine who's an old student and a dear friend. And right away, the second song came up because that's somebody else on drums. I go, that's Chad. He goes, wow, different studio, different. I said, everything's exactly the same. Chad just sat down at Shane's kit, and he's 6'4", Shane's 5'8", moves the drum stool back, and here we go, let's play. So that's the beauty of different drummers and guitar players grabbing the instrument, making it their own. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I kind of going through the album, I took a bunch of notes on a few tracks. I think Layers is a really nice song. And I often hear comments from people when it comes to instrumental music, and they're like, oh, that's kind of cool, but I really miss vocals. This is a perfect example of a song where you don't need any vocals there because you're like your lead guitar is carrying the melody, it's bringing the hook, and it's like
Yeah.
no singing necessary whatsoever. It's got to be hard to write something like that, right? That can just
Yeah. You know what? And it's early on the record, and it makes a statement without making a statement. It's just like when Shane played the drum track, I'm like, I want something in the vibe of like Desert Song, but more like Stone Cold. No fills, whatever, just simple. And just let the melody do the talking.
it works. And you
Yeah.
throw in there's they're very subtle, but they're there. They're these little kind of like almost like Thin Lizzy twin guitar harmonies going on
Yeah.
in a couple spots there. That's pretty
See,
cool.
I'm way more influenced by that camp than Jeff Beck, I gotta say. So,
Nothing wrong with that though, right?
hey, Scott Gorham, Brian Robertson, Gary Moore, come on.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Gary
Spikes.
is Gary is always one of my favorites. I miss that guy every day. And
Oh,
it's amazing like how many years go by so quickly. And like, I'm on Facebook and all of a sudden I see a bunch of people posting, remembering Gary on the day of his death. And I'm like, no, has it been another year already? I'm like,
yeah,
Jesus, it seems like it was yesterday, but it's a long time ago already.
yeah.
He was my age when he passed away,
Right,
right? 58.
right.
Jesus.
Wow. I'll be there soon. Hold on, let's hit some whiskey. Ah,
What else we got on this album? I mean, Battle of the Bulge. You got to throw some shred stuff on these albums, right?
yeah.
And
Yeah,
I'm
that
gonna,
one is just like riff, I love a good riff. It's
yeah,
like you hear like Vaseline by STP, dun, or whatever. It's just riff. No melody, none of that. Then it
no.
goes funk in the middle. And Nuno's solo just came on. Everybody's raving about it. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to try to beat that thing. I didn't beat it, but I came close.
Yeah,
No,
all of a sudden, when that last Extreme album came out, everybody heard that song, like, oh, he's back. It's like,
yeah.
where's he been
Nobody will
hiding?
hear mine. It's cool. So whatever.
Well, they
Three guys.
should. They should.
Wow.
Another track I really, really like, and maybe you could talk a little bit about how this one came about, is Self-Reflection, which is this cool little, very sparse, introspective piece, but I think it contains some of the most gorgeous playing on the album. You want to talk a little
Yeah.
bit
So
about that?
it's the precursor to the song that follows, Cosmic Dust. Um, so I'm playing these little phrases like, oh God, I'm still going from last night. But you know, I don't know if you can even hear that, these but there's this, kind of a right. So I kind of toy around and create this vibe and then play some licks, whatever I play, some harmonics, and then it goes into the next song, which is Cosmic Dust. So it kind of foreshadows that. There's a little bit of Ted Green, Eric Johnson in there, obviously Eric's a huge influence, but I don't try to blatantly steal from him like some other people do. I just have my influences, right?
Yeah.
Just these chords, right? We could write a song right now, right? It's you just telling a story,
That's it. Yeah.
voice leading. I'm just playing whatever right now.
And I
So
like how at this point in the album, and not every song going forward, but a lot of the jazz side of you comes in. Like I hear on Cosmic Dust a little bit. Maybe it's the way you're kind of layering the chords, or maybe it's the tempo of the song. I hear a little bit of like Holdsworth's solo work
Holsworth.
and a little bit of Pat Metheny as well.
Yeah. Yep.
That
So
kind of like
yeah, you
atmospheric
have great
mix.
ears. Yep, you have great ears because I had that idea under my fingers for the longest time. Let me actually grab the acoustic. It's interesting because I had these changes. Oh God. Tuning's optional, right? All that's happening is, right? But then you revoice underneath it. So we can do a lot of different voices. Uh, huh. Yeah. And so yeah, it's definitely Holsworth influenced. And Pat Metheny, kind of the ECM, Peter Erskine, Shane's like, I'm like, I don't want a backbeat. And he's listening to it. He's like, oh, we're going to find a thing. He knows all that stuff. He's a student of music, period. He knows all that, like different playing. He's like, and I already had a basic idea of the track, but there was no drums. We didn't track at the studio live. I'd be lying if I said that. But he goes, this one's going to take a little bit. And he's like finding the thing. I'm like, oh, it's so gorgeous. You're just kind of floating around. And I had a bass track I played, which, whatever. And then it's interesting because I did a gig with a bass player that just blew my mind live. I'm not going to say his name because when I went to get him in the studio, he tried 3 different passes in his studio by himself and he didn't get it. And I'm like, it's amazing how great he is. And he doesn't hear what I'm hearing and what Shane hears. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to email Jimmy Johnson because this is the guy I'm thinking about anyway, you know? And we do a Holsworth reference somewhere in there. Like, I can't remember, but like Fred or something. And Jimmy so I sent him the track. He sent it back and every note was perfect. And he literally goes, I gave you one extra note at the end. Because at the end, he holds a note and he does some phrase, better. And he finds harmonics. He goes, I gave you one note option. I hope that's okay. It's hilarious.
So yes,
And
it's more than okay, Jimmy.
It makes the record. It's like, oh my God, he's so great.
Yeah.
He was intrigued by the harmony. He said, he's very sweet. Who's on drums? And I like the harmony. It's interesting, like you're Jimmy Johnson. You played with Holsworth. You played with Landau.
He's played with everybody. I once saw him playing with Mike Stern. I was like, oh, he's just so good. He's the guy you want there, right?
Yeah.
That spot.
But the interplay is really beautiful. And, from my point of view, making a record, and I kind of always had done this, but as I get older, I take a little more time. It has to flow, man. It doesn't just get to that song second. It'd be ridiculous to go from Tribal Scream to that. It has to find a way to get there.
Yeah.
We grew up on Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, The Wall, these kind of records, and you listen to them. And I said it in a podcast, I hate to repeat myself, but I'm like, if you put it on shuffle mode with some, millennials say, oh God, you got to listen to this song and then this song and then this song. So there's a flow, I guess what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think for me, I think the album is sequenced very nicely. So, we were just talking about Cosmic Dust, right? So obviously you got some little jazzy and fusion stuff going on there. And then you get hit with Dark Lord Day, which is quite frankly like instrumental doom metal pretty much. I mean, it's just big riffy and that's like right up my alley. And then from there you move into 2 years ago today, which is again bringing out the jazz side. And I can tell that song probably has a lot of significance for you because you can kind of feel the emotion coming through on that one.
Yeah, it's I talked to Butch Jones about this. He says it's really cathartic, the day Edward Van Halen died, I was doing a TMZ session with a producer long distance and just whatever bullshit music, but good money, whatever. And I'm reading and it is what it is. And then he emailed me, Edward Van Halen just died. I was like, oh my God. The session's over. Went to the beach and sat with my wife. She's like, what do you want to do? I said, I just want to, I don't know, go to the beach. Maybe, we live like by the Indiana Dunes National Park. And I just put on Van Halen and drank beer and there's nobody anywhere to be found. And the next day I wrote a song, a tribute to Edward, just a little intro piece. But I vowed that every year since then, I'm going to do something creative on his birthday, or excuse me, on the day of his passing.
Right.
So 2 years ago today is October 6th, 2022, 2 years after he passed away. So I'm always going to come up with something, So that's kind of what it has nothing to do with the sound of how he plays in his spirit. It's just literally like, thinking about how important life is and the art that we have as players and the need to create and not to take it for granted, right? Because he was just incredibly creative and changed the instrument for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always important to remember whether it's music or whatnot, our inspirational people. And they don't have to inspire us to create something that necessarily brings them to mind or their music or their style or anything like that, but it's inspiring you to create, right? To kind of in your mind and your body and your soul, you're keeping him alive, but thinking of him is helping you create for yourself.
Yeah,
And I think that's
absolutely.
important. And I think he would want, him or anybody else would want all of us to do that anyway, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny we're having this conversation today because I just had similar conversations with Steve about I asked him exactly on the show last night. How did you feel the day he passed?
Oh,
Not having spoken to him in such a long time. And, it was interesting to hear him tell me like what he did, just like you told me what you did the day he passed. And I remember the day that he passed as well. And I remember the first thing I wanted to do was come on here and talk to my viewers about Eddie Van Halen and
right.
his music and what it meant to me, and kind of like a little kind of history recap of his life and music, right? Because you're responding in the moment, right? And
Right.
that's what I tend to do when I do these tributes to our fallen heroes. I try to do them immediately when I find out, regardless of what else I'm doing,
Yeah.
because I think it's important to kind of just let it come right out, like how you're feeling in the moment, whether it hits you really, really hard, someone who's meant a lot to you, or whether it's maybe just a musician that you admire their music, but you don't know that much about them, right? Whatever. So, but we all have our special ones.
Yeah.
And that was a special one. I remember the day that Neil Peart from Rush died. I could think of other ones who are still with us that the day they pass are going to annihilate me. I mean, that's just
Yeah.
we know that's going to
We
happen,
start weeping the whole rest of the show.
right? Yeah, not to get all morose, but it's a great song. And what's very cool is I wanted to hear your inspiration behind it because it doesn't come across as I did this song for Edward, right? It's
Yeah,
so
not at all. You have to read the liner notes.
yeah,
No, I've become really good friends with Steve Lukather. And we text and we go out to lunch whenever I'm in town and he's not out with Toto or Ringo, and he's got his old friends from back in the day. Now he has a couple new friends, and it's just a beautiful friendship. But after Edward died, I little time passed and I didn't text him. We met up for breakfast in wherever. And he's like, man, this one, he goes, I've had like 30 friends die since, in the last whatever 10 days. I mean, as we get older, this stuff happens. But he
yeah,
goes, this one hits so hard because those guys are like, you know, thick as thieves.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it was interesting to hear from his point of view. And they're both up the canyon, parallel houses and just a little bit over from each other. And so, Ed would always come by or Luke would come by his place and hang, and yeah, just crazy.
I had Steve on the show probably over 2 years ago, and he probably doesn't remember because I'm sure he did interviews with a million people, but it was not that long after Edward passed away, and we briefly talked about it. But I will tell you, if you do talk to Steve anytime recently, tell him again. He may or may not remember me. Tell him he was one of the most fun interviews I've ever done.
Yeah. Oh, he's the
I've
best.
I've rewatched that interview so many times, and he's just such a character with some just great stories, and he had me laughing, and yeah, that was like one
I
of the
went,
most fun half hours I've ever spent on this channel.
I went to a deli with him in Studio City. Anyway, we go in. It's the big room, and he knows the waitresses, and he could say the most foul things to them. It's just amazing. Then he turns, he sees Alan Hines like 30 yards away. He's like, Hines, hey, you old transvestite. I mean, the whole place can hear him. He doesn't care. And nobody thinks he's obnoxious because they all know him. He comes there every day, right?
Right? Yeah.
He looks there. He's got no filter.
Like there's Luke, the guy with no filter, right? We love
Yeah.
him.
Yeah. And Alan Hines is an incredible guitar player. He's a ridiculous musician. So, yeah.
Yeah, fun stuff.
Yeah.
Blue for Miles, another great song. I love the jazzy stuff on this album. I love the high energy stuff, but the jazzy stuff is great too.
So, I would say my strength as a composer, this heavy metal kid from Toledo, you know how you have these funky chords, right? Like a, right? Or just, whatever. So you got a 7 chord. And I went like this. Whoa. I was like, hold on, what the hell's going on here? Right? And that's the song right there. That by accidentally hitting in those open strings, tuning's optional, but and they went right. And then uh so it's all came from this chord. I don't practice like solo guitar like Tommy Emmanuel. I'm just trying to remember the melody and the chords at the same time. Um, but I'll go down that road and go, there's a song right here from this accident. Obviously, it's totally a tribute to Miles and Kind of Blue, right? Like Blue and Green, one of those songs. Exactly. And man, and again, Shane, I mean, who can play like fucking Gene Hoglan and then lay down that such sensitive space? Shane's my favorite, period.
He's great. Yeah, he's more people need to know about him. I know he's done a lot in his career, but yeah, it's
Man, I was bucking for him to get the Foo Fighters. I called Chad. I'm like, the brother needs a break. Chad goes, man, that's a great idea. And I remember when Chad met Shane, he goes, dude, you look like my bro, Taylor, because Chad and Taylor were best friends. And the day Chad met him, he kept looking back at him like, this is like 2002, you know, because it's fucking crazy. You look like my bro Taylor. Shane sings amazing, and he was heartbroken when Taylor passed away, and he would never try to get a gig. You know, he's just like, nah. You know, I just pray that, you know, all is right in the universe, and it was so sad what happened with this.
yeah,
But you know, we're vulnerable as people. So
too many losses, right? Yeah, it's anybody can go at any time, unfortunately. So,
skip.
Jeff, before we let you go, I do want to ask you. I think the last time I saw you play live, you were in Glenn Hughes's band at
Yeah.
Chan in Poughkeepsie, New York, doing a bunch of old, cool Deep Purple songs. How was that for you?
Oh man. Well, you know, I love Richie, and guitar players play Richie Blackmore songs, but they don't tend to sound like Richie. So it was like, okay, I'm really gonna get into this. You know, I already stole shit from them all in my life. You know, Death
We
Alley
all have.
Driver,
We all have.
Stone Cold. Come on. But then it's like I want to play the solo for fucking Smoke on the Water. If people close their eyes, they think it's the recording. You know, I really get into it because Blackmore, he just was genius. He threw it off on the cuff, and then he never went back and even revisited it.
Never,
Never, right? So, and I love playing with Glenn. I met him in, I don't know, around 2001, and we did Songs of the Key of Rock together, that record. And then I produced one, him and Joel and Turner, HTP, JJ Marsh, wonderful guitar player.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's the same cast of characters, Chad and Shane, and you know, back then. But you know, Glenn and we always kind of come in and out of each other's lives. I just saw him on a cruise. I said, let's work together next year. He has Soren, which is cool, and you know, it's all right. We'll I don't mean it's all right. We all kind of cross paths when we're supposed to. But you know, they begged me to do this. His manager's like, you know, nobody can do Blackmore like you, and it's bullshit. I mean, everybody can, but and I'm like, I'm not leaving Alan Parsons to go with Glenn Hughes because well,
That's the bigger gig. I mean, yeah, this
yeah. But somehow they talked me into it, and I subbed out a few shows with Alan, like Burning Man, and he said, "Well, Glenn cancels. I need a kill fee, you know, this kind of stuff." Because Glenn's an artist. He's like, you know, Donny Hathaway. He's like things come in his head, and he's on to the next, on to the next. Maybe it's Dead Daisies, Black Country Communion, Glenn Solo. I'm like, Glenn, just be Glenn Hughes. You know, Prince is Prince. He hires who he wants, and he's Prince. But you know, I mean, you can't tell anybody what to do with their career. I'm still trying to figure mine out.
yeah. I think Glenn just likes to keep busy, and if one of the
Yeah, he's a beautiful
acts
human
he's working
being.
with is not busy enough, he goes on to the next one.
Yeah, he's such a talent, man. It's unbelievable.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm blown. You know, I've talked a lot about Glenn Hughes, and I've been a fan for a long time, and I think that he went through many, many years of hell. He came out of it. You if you didn't know any better, you could say he came out of it unscathed, right? Because he sounds better than ever. And maybe all those years in self-inflicted hell, not touring year after year after year, just preserved that voice because now he's
Yeah,
singing as if he, basically took 30 years off and he's just as good as he
yeah.
was in the 70s.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, when he got into the lowest point of addiction, I think probably Tommy Bolin had a lot to do with, Tommy died and what was he, 25 or 27?
Yeah, young.
And they were thick as thieves. I mean, you could tell they were brothers from another mother, and it happened, and then Glenn just went into the abyss. And I remember him talking about an interview. He goes, and my friends like David Coverdale, they just went on to do Whitesnake and all these great things, and I just went on to, cocaine, chocolate, and whatever, the abyss. So I met him maybe you know, 8 years after he got through the tunnel. And yeah, so I feel blessed that I've met him and know him, and I call him a dear friend, and work with him on and off. So
Yeah, he's an inspiration, I think. Every time I've seen him in more recent times, I look up at him and I'm like, man. And all I can remember is back in whatever it was, 86 or 87, seeing one of the few shows that he actually sang with Black Sabbath, and he was awful.
yeah,
And I felt so bad for him because I was a fan, still a fan, and watching him up there with my favorite band of all time, and he was just struggling, croaking. I'm like, what's wrong with him?
yeah,
And to see him now, it's like a completely different person.
yeah. I think they did War Pigs. He didn't know the words in Detroit, and Don Arden probably left him a, thank you, goodbye. Here's your plane ticket home. I think that's what I heard, but
Yeah, he wasn't cutting it. It's just,
yeah.
yeah.
But you
But
know
you
what?
listen to him, he talks about it now, and he's like, I don't feel bad at all that Tony did what he did. He had to do that.
Yeah.
They had to fire me.
Well, Glenn has a saying, there's no mistakes in God's universe.
Everything happens for a reason, right? Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah, I don't know. I've heard something recently. I believe it either came from him or Tony Iommi. One of them said that they hope to work together in the near future. So I'm hoping they happen. It happens because
that would be
neither of them are
amazing.
getting any younger. We need another Hughes
Yeah.
Iommi album, I think.
Yeah.
So cool. So 2023 AD, if you could hold that record up one more time, Jeff, is the latest and greatest from Jeff Kollman. Uh, Chock full of exciting instrumentals, hard rock.
Angry.
Is yeah. And look at that Flying V. For those
Oh yeah. Come
folks who
on
love
up.
Flying V's, you can't resist that cover, right?
Yeah.
So
1979.
yeah, and it's available everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
So digital, CD, vinyl, the whole shebang.
And
So go check it out. Do you have a Bandcamp page by any chance?
I'm sure I do. Yeah, I'm sure I do.
Okay. What I'll do is I'll put a link down below for folks to go check out the album and order and all that good stuff. So it makes it easier for our viewers. And we want to thank Jeff for joining us today. And what's in the immediate future for you?
You know
Music.
what? Yeah. Let's see. In 2 weeks, at the end of the month, we're doing um Georgia. We might do an interview with or maybe just Alan. It's confusing with Rick Beato. And then the next day we're playing the Ryman Theater, and we're doing Rig Rundown at the Ryman. You know those Rig Rundown with Premier Guitar. And I have never played the Ryman, so that's very exciting. And that's coming right up in like I don't know 10 days.
Wow.
And then yeah, all kinds of random stuff this summer. I'm really pushing my music. I want to book as many shows as I can. Like I'm texting Danny Zalesko every other day. Come on, let's work. He's like, yeah, okay, let's figure it out. So yeah, man, because it's easy to fall back on these wonderful artists that you work with. And I work with this Japanese artist, and I'll be over there for 2 months in the winter, and it's just wonderful. And Alan, he's starting to ramp it up again. So, he had some back issues and he had surgery.
Yep. Yep.
So, he's doing a couple fly dates here and there, just getting back into it, getting comfortable. And so, and I have some shows with Lou Graham coming up. Like
Oh, nice. Wow. Okay. Yeah.
maybe between now and October, I'm doing like 10 shows with him. Something in July, and yeah. And then I do random shows with John Payne, Asia. He was the singer after
Yep.
um,
John Wetton.
John Witten. And we do these all-star singer things. He started this thing, the Rock Pack. And I remember my first gig with him, it's like Fee Waybill, Robin Zander. I'm playing with Steve Walsh from Kansas. We're doing all those songs. And it was like the last show Steve ever played because he had a stalker backstage, and he literally drove his truck from the venue, the Germanium Arena. It's right when we ended the show. He whispered to my best friend back then, Chris Maloney, one of my dear friends. And I'm like, why are these guys, what are they talking about? Chris goes, check this out. This girl backstage who we thought was like the hand of the promoter's assistant. She's one of his stalkers for like 20 years. It freaked him out. He got in his vehicle and he was somewhere outside Atlanta. And I bet he never even stopped for gas. And he's never played a show since then.
Wow. He's like, this
So
is
it's,
enough of
you
this
know, it's,
nonsense.
yeah. And P. Waybill's like, you know, we playing White Punks on dope. He goes, don't fuck up my song, guys. Hey, Kollman, you sound great. Don't fuck my song up. I'm like, oh, you rock. You know, and then you're on stage with like, you know, God, Greg Rowley playing all that Santana stuff. And I mean, what a fun thing, because you're not joining these guys' bands, right? But you're just having a fun show where you play with, you know, Alan, he just had his birthday. I'm playing with Michael McDonald. Joe Bonamassa played. He never remembers who I am. That's cool. Yeah, it's a whole nother podcast. And I mean, just it's just so beautiful, you know, playing with all these heroes of yours, you know.
Yeah, and that's what you do, right?
Yeah, I mean, come on, it's what we do.
Yeah.
Just try to, and it's not easy for a lot of guys to slip into these different, like playing with Michael McDonald. I'm like, okay, so who's singing the harmonies on this, you know? And he was just one of the sweetest guys I'd ever met.
That's what I've heard.
You know, that day he signed a record for my sister-in-law, and then after sound check, he's like telling me a story. He goes, your sister-in-law Pam will love this story. And he had a story about writing a song with Kenny Loggins back in the day, one of the big hits. And Kenny's going to come over to his apartment. And Michael McDonald's sister was a massive fan, Kenny Loggins. So she offered to come over and clean up his apartment. She's like, he can't see it like this. And I want to get my stuff signed. He's like, she never cleaned my apartment since. And, yeah, they had a big hit with that. But it was beautiful. He's like, he remembered Pam's name. He shared a story, you know, after sound check. And, you know, it's just, wow. Wonderful.
That's always good when you hear stories like that. Right?
Yeah, you know, I gotta tell stories. I'm excited. So people are like, is he on cocaine? Is his hair real? I'm like, yeah, it's fucking real. Steve Lucas says the same thing. Yeah, God damn it, my hair is real.
I like Steve going with the white look.
Yeah.
Because I saw them last year. And I thought it looked great. You know, it still looks like Steve, right?
We went for breakfast during COVID, and you could tell he hadn't seen a visitor in a while, and he needed to get out. He was getting like fucking losing his mind, as we all did. So I stopped by his house to pick him up, and he walks outside. He's like, "Oh man, good to see you." And he's like, "Oh shit, man, he's got black on his hands." I'm like, "Shit." Oh.
It's like enough of this, right? Yeah, I'm gonna give it up. It's like him and Brian May, right? Brian May held on to that for a long time too.
Yeah. And one of the sweetest guys too, right? Brian May, one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. Period. So humble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So if you're out checking out shows this summer, go see Jeff with the Alan Parsons Project, and a little bit later on with Lou Gramm and John Payne and all the rest, because I'm sure there'll be more. Yeah, all the mess, as well as hopefully some solo shows too. I think that'll be really, really cool. And Jeff, if you're doing anything in the New York area, please let me know. We'd love to come check you out.
Yeah, absolutely.
And check out the album. I'll put some links below. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube all together all the damn time. For Jeff Kollman, I am Pete Pardo. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you soon here on SOT. Have a good one, everybody. Bye-bye.